As part of his 2016 presidential bid, Donald Trump introduced multiple revolutionary elements to the design of presidential campaigns.
Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight.
From turning his rallies into stand-up comedy shows to embracing fast food jobs, both of Trump's presidential campaigns were bursting with carnival energy. But none of the elements of the Trump campaign are as influential as the red MAGA hat. At the whim of an advertisement genius or simply by accident, Trump introduced a prototype of a MAGA hat as a white baseball cap on his campaign trip for 2016 election. Shortly after, the head of every Trump supporter became an advertisement billboard topped with a little red crown, a beacon of rising MAGA faith. Since then, the newfound tradition of placing political slogans on red hats with no further elaboration has become a widely used political stunt, and conservatives wearing a MAGA hat at liberal gatherings became their own genre of content. The red hat itself became so polarizing that in 2019, Rebecca Mackay even suggested that the red hat, based solely on its red color, is a symbol of affiliation with MAGA and should not be worn by normal people. Trump himself is a red lion devouring the sun, a symbol of masculinity, sulfur, and power. He is the embodiment of the red color itself. He is the fear of liberal journalists scared of the red hat, proven right. The Carnival of Red continued till 2024, when Elon Musk appeared in his black Gothic MAGA hat, proclaiming a rise of a new political aesthetic.
I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark Gothic MAGA.
The red MAGA hat, a symbol of social rejection of the Republican voters, was now confronted by the dark Gothic MAGA hat of tech billionaires. The billionaires who, like many MAGA voters, felt disenfranchised and sidelined in the playing field of modern American politics. Those who would like to have political power equivalent to their wealth rather than being footboys to the White House officials. Trump and Musk are themselves symbols of two different political ideologies within the conservative movement, feeding off each other while also competing for dominance, as reflected in their fruitful yet troubled attempts at cooperation, as well as in their aesthetic choices. As Elon Musk notes himself, the red MAGA of Donald Trump is aging, and his political power will inevitably weaken, while the tech bros of Silicon Valley are only just getting started. Soon, the carnival rallies will be over, and it will be up for new political symbols and aesthetics. MAGA is a dream about the return of a prosperous past in the hardships of the present. But the dreams of the past are futile. They are but a dream of an aging civilization that is too afraid to look into the future. The future which tech overlords, along with their political representatives, welcome with open arms and try to bring into reality through their political games. The dark Gothic MAGA was originally represented by Musk as a meme material because he wants to be a cool internet boy, but it was not just a different colored hat. Dark Gothic MAGA is a vision of the future that is reflected in many other objects of the technocratic power. Cybertrucks, data-driven detention facilities, AI-generated Ghibli art of crying immigrant women, automated weapon systems, a meme-named agency that is used to gut an American state, and VR-augmented pleasure pods for the poor. The visions of the dark MAGA future are becoming our reality. The Trumpian MAGA future is clear: an American dream, a golden age of capitalism, and a cultural return of suburban Christian moms. But what exactly does the future look like for the dark Gothic MAGA? Is it a Cybertruck, a metallic, hostile-looking vehicle that sacrifices any sense of utility and comfort for what, exactly? If Cybertruck is supposed to represent the future of humanity, what sort of future do we envision? The dark Gothic MAGA, which I will call dark MAGA because of technologic efficiency, is built on the ideas of Silicon Valley tech elites and neo-reactionaries that leech on them. Silicon Valley is not interested in maintaining any sort of tradition aside of virtue signaling to mainstream conservative voters. Rather, they try to ask if new, better traditions can be formed in the American society. What if, instead of chasing the past, we could simply roll into the new vision of the future? The future where the wildest technological dreams of the rich boys can become true, not just self-driving cars and space tourism, but an endless life in luxury and pleasure for the rich at the price of control, surveillance, and brainwashing for the rest of humanity. Ideas, as well as physical objects, have a profound impact on how we live our lives and shape our reality. And political objects pierce our social structures with their messaging, even though we don't necessarily pay close attention to those objects in our daily life. So you can view Cybertruck as a joke, but it is for real. Cybertruck is also interesting because it is both a political object, as in it conveys a political message, and a political target, as in due to close association with the politics of Silicon Valley and specifically with Elon Musk, damaging Cybertruck is also a political statement. That's why people set them on fire, because it does send a message that targets our collective social and political view, and not necessarily the owner of the Cybertruck who, due to the loss of their car, won't be able to properly display their colorful personality of an absolutely miserable middle-aged man with too much dispensable income.
It's like legalized comedy. Yeah.
But even if tech bros have some dystopian ideas for the future, they aren't stupid, so they try to present their ideas as something desirable for humanity as a whole, or simply as a joke. Dark MAGA utilizes simplification, irony, internet speak, whistleblowing, memes, pop culture, sci-fi references, along with a multitude of other subtle tools as a means to veil their intentions and dissociate from any responsibility for the negative outcomes of their projects. Peter Thiel is always quiet, Curtis Yarvin is never serious, and JD Vance didn't fuck the couch. According to the way the new right presents their thoughts, any ideas that are coming from the new right, be it tech bros, neo-reactionaries, or even neo-fascists, are not to be taken seriously. But what if we do take those ideas seriously? What if we look at the Cybertruck and ask, is this fridge on rollers indeed a manifestation of our collective dream of what the world of future is supposed to look like? Elon Musk, who is not the most influential but definitely the most visible political figure of Silicon Valley for now, often uses political objects as a way to agitate his support base while maintaining the allure of a meme. So anti-bureaucratic chainsaw at a CPAC is a joke and a meme reference that he stole or, maybe, purchased in a true libertarian manner from Javier Milei's presidential campaign. However, it is also a direct reference to Curtis Yarvin's idea of rage, or the removal of all governmental employees, which has been openly discussed by JD Vance and attempted through Musk's Doge project.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state.
So yes, this look may seem cool to a specific circle of his supporters who I would consider to be just as cringeworthy. But also, we need to seriously examine the idea of removing all governmental employees from JD Vance's future and not just passively consume this idea as a meme. Of course, in his political career, JD Vance relies on reducing the red tape and other typical rhetoric that your conservative uncle still gulps despite losing their job, healthcare, and housing to the neoliberal policies. However, in Yarvin's interpretation, the rage doesn't mean that there is no control over the society. It just means that the function of governmental control is redirected elsewhere. Part of the governmental function responsible for social security can be completely erased, as it is not going to benefit the rulers of a new regime in any way. Part can be outsourced to AI models that will hallucinate through the legal bills, developing a system that will subject citizens to automated bureaucracy by turning every governmental agency into a call bot that asks you to press ones and twos to avoid prison sentence. And whatever functions actually matter to the ruling class can be outsourced to the corporate structures controlled by tech elite without any accountability to the citizens. So, what does the chainsaw at CPAC stand for? Since it's just me sitting in front of the camera, I will answer my own question. It stands for Silicon Valley redirecting the political and monetary power of the American state away from existing institutions into new ones regulated by Silicon Valley tech billionaires. The CPAC look becomes even shadier. Sorry. When we talk about polarized sunglasses. To those who don't know, those are just sunglasses. And the Gothic MAGA font is just the Gothic font. Please ignore any other historical reoccurrences of Frankfurt in a political context. Musk actively chooses specific attire to signal to the furthest corners of the modern reactionary spaces. The latest style choice of his is inspired by Fashwave, a niche far-right aesthetic that stems off synthwave, that is popular among modern far-right teenagers. As a cherry on the cake, anyone who openly highlights those signals to the far-right looks like an idiot, that is, myself, claiming that everything is fascist. Look, it's not my fault that some of you watching were not invited for the white boy summer and thus can't read the room. And for the record, I do think that Musk's effect on social and political fabric of the world are terrible and destructive, but I do not consider him to be a fascist. Sorry, but a man who supposedly downs a ton of drugs, has the body morphology of a mole rat, breeds his children like a livestock, yet can't even get the guts to impregnate a woman by natural means, cannot be a fascist.
Stop it! You are embarrassing yourself in front of this woman and your pedomorphic friend.
With their side projects, choice of company names, and sometimes even a choice of personal style, Silicon Valley and adjacent characters try to allure to a new, different version of the future that they aim to bring into reality. Elon Musk's fresh company town Starbase is located in Texas, not on Mars, yet the name implies where Musk wishes his company town was. Technocrats' desire for a rapid radical change is sometimes referred to as accelerationism. Move fast and break things, says Mark as he transitions from his plans to strap a headset to every Facebook user to promising us AI-simulated online friendships.
But the average person wants more connectivity, connection than they have.
Though the idea of moving fast and breaking things in the name of progress is not new by any means. In its previous incarnation, the idea of speed and progress at any cost was propagated by avant-garde movement, which spread to artistic, social, and political circles in the first half of the 20th century. Avant-garde artists were fueling the fascist rise to power in Italy while also having a stronghold in the growing communist wave in Russia. No matter of their political affiliation, avant-gardists were disturbed by the difference between the technological progress of the 19th and 20th centuries and the lack of said progress in the society. They desired to usher in a new future for Europe, regardless of the blood that would be required to bring the said future into reality. Marinetti, the father of the avant-garde and author of the Fascist Manifesto, among other notable works, advocated for unstoppable speed for the sake of speed, incorporating erratic movement into his works. He pushed society to take a mortal leap from the cliff, advocating for the destruction of museums, historical art objects, and architecture to rupture in the new technological age. Meanwhile, in the USSR, Mayakovsky proclaimed that art was already dead, that art had been killed in war, and that the role of a new artist was to create works of utilitarian value that would serve the communist revolution itself. In his poetry, he taught ex-peasants new standards of hygiene, advocated for family abolition, and worked tirelessly to create a new vision of a Soviet man, a citizen of a global communist future. Unlike Silicon Valley tech pros, avant-gardists did not need to rely on whistleblowing and algorithmically optimized self-censorship. They spoke openly about their desire to crush the past and the present and about their lust for violence that would bring in the future. Italian futurists thought that war would be able to push poor, starving Italy into the future, like a new humanity being born in blood, sweat, and tears of its mother. Soviet futurists, on their end, embraced the idea of militarized class solidarity and international communist revolution as their version of the birth of a new society. Both waves of futuristic movements were widely utilized by their associated authoritarian governments. As Monica Baum-Duchesne observes in her work Art and the Second World War, Authoritarianism has always been interested in controlling the cultural narrative, and art is fundamental to that narrative. So, after coming to power, authoritarian systems changed their artistic goals from the revolutionary vision of the future to a monotone, filtered uniformity that is necessary to maintain an authoritarian government in power. There may be a lesson here about the future of the accelerationist thinkers and their Silicon Valley patrons, but I digress. Italian futurists viewed Mussolini as a leader of the future, frequently incorporating his recognizable profile into their art. Mussolini's Italy was intended to be a rebirth of the Roman Empire, yet it was also envisioned as something entirely new in its own right. The vision of the rebirth of a glorious past into even more glorious revolutionary future finds a reflection in the Silicon Valley thought of new social order. Specifically, Yarvin's ideas of techno-feudalism, a monarchical system that references the past yet envisions a completely new form of society. A society which, by the way, I think should be more appropriately called technototalitarianism and not techno-feudalism. We're not talking about the tech elite's desire to become landlords. They already are the kings of their domains. Instead, we're talking about the tech elites seeking total control over the structure of the present and future societies, a new regime that, if all goes well, will continue forever, just as lives of the tech billionaires themselves. There are, though, notable differences between the modern neo-reactionary Silicon Valley momentum and Italian futurists. Both imagine a radical new vision of the future, but they are not the same futures. The 20th century movement placed humans at the center of progress, from gunners to spacemen to industrial workers. Even housewives were placed in the re-envisioned kitchens of the future, with direct access to water, electricity, household electronics, and bright plastic Tupperware. The Silicon Valley accelerationism, though, does not put humans at the center of their ideas of the future. Quite on contrary, they envision the future of machines. Bezos envisions spaceships piloted by computers on their way out of the galaxy, while Zuckerberg imagines internet full of generated content produced and consumed by AI in a weird cycle of mechanized self-gratification. In such a future, there is no place for a modern, primitive man. Rather, intelligence takes a central position, which, per Nick Land, may or may not be human. To unleash the true potential of modern technology, to separate intelligence from the human, all humans need to be separated from their biology and from their irrational urges. Humans need to be automated and machinized to match what tech bros perceive as a more desired, true intelligence, its computerized form. In the words of Nick Land, nothing human makes it out of the near future. And Silicon Valley is looking at the diversity of chaotic, unpredictable human behaviors as an obstacle that prevents society from unleashing a true progress. Ultimately, the universal value of human life itself is the enemy of the future and needs to be abolished to usher in the age of the conscious machine. For, in the technocratic future, a conscious machine is a carrier of the true intelligence. It is better, superior to humans. Augmented, automated humans must overcome their urge for unique expression, emotions, and imagination in the name of minimalism and company savings. To return to Kekius-in-chief Elon Musk, his life and style choices are located in stark contrast to Trump, who stylistically represents an ideology of the old world. It is no secret that the Mar-a-Lago residency of Trump resembles a Renaissance palace, and so does the Oval Office now, and Trump himself is not afraid of color, be it his choice of hats or his skin tone. On the other hand, Musk consistently prefers black and gray color schemes. He often engages in a sort of poverty play, where he pretends to be a normal person by living in frugal, minimalistic dwellings. The man himself tries to live like a SpaceX employee in a Mars bunker rather than the richest boy on Earth, almost role-playing a character from the future. He also puts his aesthetics and ideology into his projects beyond Cybertruck. Starbase, for example, relies on RV units as living quarters for its employees. The metal bodies of RVs are like little 20th century satellites orbiting a SpaceX rocket, further connecting Starbase to space exploration. In all of North America, permanent trailer life is emblematic of white trash and poverty overall. Yet, at the Starbase Airstream trailers, which, by the way, are quite expensive, are supposed to represent a desirable housing option for the rising elite. Old futurists experimented with space, color and shape while developing new inventions and devices, and their ideas also reflected on how they imagined new homes, clothes, and machines of the future, which were full of human-centered optimism. Technocrats instead further already existing minimalist and utilitarian ideas, further enforcing uniformity and minimalism in technology and culture that they imagined for the humanity. Tech billionaires imagine future for themselves as separate entities from the rest of humanity. And needless to say, billionaire class already sort of exists in the future. For them, the borders of the states are already abolished, as money can buy them entrance into any country. Their healthcare, education, wellness, and diets are already personalized, data-driven, and technologically augmented. And their daily needs are taken care of either by smart devices or by servants that impersonate smart devices. This lifestyle, however, is not intended to be shared with the rest of the world, but only with those deemed worthy. The rest of the humans may face a different type of the technological future, such as data-driven policing or AI-managed bureaucracy. Tech elites don't dream of the future for all. Quite openly, they dip into race realism, profiling, and social credit systems to justify why they are the ones worthy of the bright side of the future, while others aren't. Needless to remind everyone here that families of Thiel and Musk significantly benefited from the segregation in South Africa, and their ideas of the future are tightly linked to colonial segregation. Musk's granddad, who passed early in Musk's life but seems to have left an overwhelming imprint on his grandson, was also involved in Howard Scott's technocracy movement of the early 1930s that advocated for new autocratic government formed by scientists and engineers. Technocrats advocated for slashing of governmental agencies, reducing courts' oversight of the legal system, and deregulating the industry to unshackle progress, and fighting the supposed mind conditioning of the masses. That is, they were unhappy about media and universities diminishing support of race science and eugenics. Rings some bells, eh? Now, for Silicon Valley and Yarvin, it is all about a human diversity doctrine, basically repainted eugenics. Social and resource inequality for them are merely an extension of natural genetic inequality, and so different groups of people are intrinsically worthy of different futures, though be it financial success and not a skull diameter that determines their measure of intelligence. But for now, tech bros have to pretend that they are not serious when they talk about retiring all governmental employees or having a monarchic state led by a CEO dictatorship. Just as Yarvin has to pretend that he too is not serious about converting the jobless poor into biofuel to power minibuses. Everything is a meme and a joke, and if someone decides to take these ideas seriously, they're just an idiot who didn't get the bid. Cybertruck itself is a meme too. It's a joke of sorts. It is an unattractive car that resembles the latest Samsung refrigerator. But does it look funny? Or what does it look like? The heavy steel frame with sharp lines gives Cybertruck a brutalist look. It is also larger than normal vehicles, and weird frame design is a perfect choice for giving driver anonymity, while it also restricts driver's visibility of the back, sides, and front of the vehicle, making Cybertruck an ideal vehicle for accidents involving parking poles, dogs, and small children. The idea, originally aired by Musk, stated that Cybertruck is inspired by his son's idea to design something that looks like a cool car from the future. And by all means, let's accept this story and assume that this is what Elon imagines when he thinks about the car of the future. So this is a cool car from the future that, by coincidence, looks like a Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk turned into a car. Don't get me wrong, this is not the first or the last time military technology inspires civil design. Noted Italian futurists also integrated military aviation design into their cars, but these folks also openly claimed that World War I was the coolest event ever because of how many new creative ways we had developed to kill each other at that time. Futurists didn't pretend to be peaceful. For them, violence was the point. Tesla vehicles are also equipped with bioweapon defense mode that turns the vehicle into a secure shelter in case of a biological attack. It is somewhat bulletproof, and the low driver visibility of a Cybertruck is an echo of military practice which preserves the identity and safety of soldiers operating military equipment. So, Musk's son asked Papa to imagine a cool future and got a vehicle that is meant to remind us of the civilian bombings in the Middle East. I am not sure I want to see the rest of this cool future he imagines. Technocrats discuss life extension, space travel, medical enhancements, and the extinction of species and other cool futuristic endeavors that we should aim for in the future. But when their ideas materialize, we get cars that look like bombers, drone swarm systems, military technologies integrated into civilian policing, surveillance that is so deep that Palantir's ever-watching eye may as well be in your butthole right now, and bright, sanitized detention facilities for those deemed unwanted. Clearly, the future they envision is not what is advertised to us, or at least there are two versions of the future that the Silicon Valley envisions, one for themselves and their support network, and the other for everyone else. Let me ask you a totally unrelated question right now. How does one ensure that crime levels remain low in Peter's Praxis town? CEO needs to think of a solution to the problems of his future projects, and thus he invests heavily in surveillance, mass communications, automated weapon systems, and proactive policing. Totalitarian control of the masses is a non-violent solution to the future cities like Peterville, which will combine advanced intelligence agents and pesky mortal humans. This is the stated goal of Palantir, one of Thiel's current pet investments. Palantir is all about safety, non-violence, and preventative policing. Together with Alex Karp, both military tech billionaires are obsessed about using power to create safe spaces for those who they consider in need of protection. Peter, for example, is really worried about safety, almost as much as he is worried about the technological and scientific stagnation. He often discusses his opposition to violence and civil unrest, particularly when it involves any form of opposition to authority, as in his view, pain directed towards upper classes is violence, but pain directed onto the lower classes or foreigners is merely peacekeeping.
But you have to make an argument, and you have to try to find a way to convince people and change it by that. And this is not going to work.
Without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to second guess everything.
Peter is not the only one speaking about safety while profiteering from military and police contracts. His egg-shaped friend, Mark Andreessen, extensively backs military and surveillance businesses too. The actual papa of Palantir and Thiel's close friend, Alex Karp, is the only guy who, it seems, missed the memo on keeping things chill for a while. And so, he sounds like an absolutely unhinged maniac anytime he opens his mouth and has to talk about his work.
We're like the pure drug on the streets. High-priced, a real hit. You feel good for days, and it makes you stronger and better.
That's okay, Alex. I too sometimes skip reading my emails. Basically, Alex's vision of a peaceful future boils to our need to learn to kill way more people, way faster, and preferably with robots if we want to have a better future.
Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them. And we hope you're in favor of that. We hope you're enjoying being a partner, and we're really happy and very focused on what we're doing. Thank you for your time. As
Marinetti already noted back 100 years ago, war is the only hygiene of the world. So Alex Karp keeps his practices aligned with the Futurist manifesto. And, I use Thiel and Karp and similar guys as a butt of a joke, which may make them seem like idiots, but they are not. What? Do you want to go or do you not want to go? Do you want to go or do you not want to go, sir? He wants to go, but he also doesn't want other cats to be there. Peter knows what the fate of the dragons is in the folklore, and he is not very interested in getting slayed by some random hero of the village who came to visit his new Erebor bank. Seal is interested in immortality, in more than one way. Artificially extending his life is only one aspect of it. Not getting undone is just as important. We already see the use of effective non-violent preventative policing in the US in the form of extradition of people into the Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo, more commonly known as the El Salvador prison. The sanitary whiteness of CICOT is a choice, a staged performance of cleanliness and non-violence in a clearly very violent place. The building itself is as staged as painted and restitched face of the US Homeland Security Secretary recording a TikTok in front of tattooed prisoners, who we know nothing about but are supposed to be afraid of. The aesthetics of cleanliness are used to normalize the fact that the US is openly trafficking humans from the US soil into foreign countries without any legal proceedings. The white, clean, technologically advanced design of CICOT is a statement of the supposed humane conditions of the prison. It is a prison that, like Trump's new detention facilities, is intended to resemble a modern hospital or even the innards of the Star Wars space station, but placed in a hostile environment. CICOT supposedly saves Americans from violence brought on by so-called illegal immigrants, while also preventing any violence between the inmates due to its use of advanced policing technologies. It is a humane miracle of efficiency. Just don't look into this meat pile in the yard, okay? CICOT, just like Cybertruck, is an object from the technocratic future that we can observe in our present. It is a prison of the future, augmented with millions of surveillance and tracking devices, funded by cryptocurrency investments, where each US inmate is being used to generate income for the government of El Salvador. CICOT is a paradise project for reactionary futurists. There are many ways to describe the technological undertone in American politics. Some people describe it as neo-reactionary, or neo-monarchist, or some will even say that it is fascist. All of those, I think, are wrong, because they do not properly capture the essence of the political ideas of the coming Silicon Valley elite, aside of the general shitty vibe from those people. Tech billionaires are not part of MAGA, nor are they part of a 16th century Spanish monarchy or 20th century fascist party. Those movements inspired the future of technototalitarianism, but ultimately, Silicon Valley proposes a different, new political system that is not fully formed yet, and we do not have proper vocabulary to describe yet either. As Yuval Kremnitzer writes in Totalitarianism Without Totality on the cynical core of the new right, and yet while something like full-blown totalitarianism might crystallize at some point, we must be able to recognize a different possibility, that our present is constituted by a strange, quasi-stabilized, pre-totalitarian or semi-totalitarian reality, or what I label here a totalitarianism without totality. In the last decades, mainstream liberal institutions propose that the world is collapsing, both economically and environmentally, and that we can't stop and shouldn't stop it. Liberal politicians and parties claim that the technological stagnation of never-ending revisions of the same iPhone, climate change, wars, downward social mobility of the workers, and crippling dysfunction of the Western institutions simply cannot be avoided. To quote Jordan Peterson, of all people, "Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world." This is our current solution to any crisis. Both left and right fractions within existing democratic systems fail to envision the future beyond what already exists or has passed. In return, Dark MAGA holds a promise that some of us, those of us who have power and knowledge, can sway collapse in their favor, hide from stagnation in their safe boats, and, once the crisis is over, build a new world of the future to their own liking. In the world of chaos, tech billionaires dream of a lifeboat, of objects and places where they do not feel threatened by the consequences of their actions. The vision of a techno-totalitarian future is a safe, hidden shelter for the tech elite where their wealth, status, and life will be unaffected by the world that they work so dearly to create for us. The cold, hostile design of Cybertruck that protects its passengers in a steel box, Martian bases on an inhospitable planet, and prosperous city-states surrounded by poverty-ridden nothingness. All are the visions of a lifeboat for the selected few. The crystal-clear manifestation of a lifeboat is, of course, a billionaire bunker. Silicon Valley technocrats and new elites are well invested in the large, locked and guarded underground facilities that are designed to withstand climate catastrophe, social unrest, and military struggle that the same billionaires work to accelerate. Tech billionaire Futurism promises salvation for the worthy few, while everyone else can, and perhaps should, die in the name of technologically enhanced future. The ultimate vision of the totalitarian future for peasants is a human pod, the final, most desirable futuristic invention for the coming new age, more human than Seacot or drone warfare, yet just as effective and necessary for the imagined future. The human pod is a housing unit of acceptable convenience that can be used to lock up all of the undesirables and poor losers so that the billionaires can safely leave their bunkers and not dream of lifeboat any longer. In Principles of Any Next Regime, Curtis Yarvin introduces the idea of a human pod, which he calls an antisocial box. A new life awaits you on the off-world colonies. You will live in the pod and eat the bugs. You will love it because this pod is the ultimate gamer pod. Your pod, which fits in a box 3 meters on the side, is a full presence experience. It provides not just audio-visual presence, as in today's VR, but haptic physical presence. Your hands are virtual hands, which can hold and use virtual tools. The pod is also an exercise pod with both aerobic and resistance affordances. With various loathsome extensions, you can have sex through it. It can even squirt drugs into your nostrils. The box is a cell in a kind of human beehive. Inside the pod, you live in a fairy tale as a hero fighting dragons with your guild. Your haptic controller is so realistic that you could leave the pod and be a great swordsman in the real world. But when was the last time the real world needed swordsmen? You can work physically in the real world, use your haptic controller to operate real machinery. Anything from a vacuum cleaner to a bulldozer can be operated for bitcoins by some gamer in a pod. Not as fun as fighting dragons, not inhumane either. These human buffers then create intelligence data centers, letting any machine in the real world power itself, not by feeble artificial intelligence, but by AI complete natural intelligence. A rail and/or sea network can transport boxes to wherever support costs are lowest or more computing power is needed. A light will flash when your box is about to move. You remain legally a resident of wherever you came from, of course. You can go back there at any time you like, but the box is sealed, and so is the hive. You actually have no idea where you are geographically, and you have no reason to care. A light will flash when your box is about to move. For many gamers, this sealed solo pod life would actually be an ideal existence. But the natural human unit of social organization is a tribe or village with tens to hundreds of fellow unwinged bipeds. You know all these people as human beings, names, faces, personalities. The pod village houses a whole human community in one space. The users in this community interact physically with each other, but virtually with the rest of the world. The DM can move users between communities, but users do not regularly circulate. A sealed village cannot be mobile, but it can occupy one or more floors of a high-rise hive. Everyone enters this prison only on their own free will. Now we have to persuade normal people, not just degenerate gamers, to move into a literal jail, which they can still leave at any time. However, strong product engineering can deliver, and this will call for some serious marketing chops. The pitch is simple and not new. A new life awaits you on the off-world colonies. Are you living a shitty life in a shitty place? Why not join the crew of a galactic starship? The human pod is a voluntary and luxury version of Seacot confinement center. with total surveillance and control, but also with food and pillows. Human Pod is a containment facility for all access population that is not necessary to maintain the high standards of living for the technocrats in the bright, automated future. Just like the futurists of the 20th century envisioned new houses full of electronic devices and inventions, Yarvin too envisions home for a man of the future. And it is a cage, which has access to work and endless entertainment in exchange for surveillance and control over one's autonomy. A sedated, augmented, and surveyed non-violence of Peter Thiel brought to absolute. And Yarvin is right. Being in a human pod is a desirable condition. For it is also a pleasure pod, a path to an isolated yet blissful life in solitude. The opposition to a human pod in the technocratic future means facing a reality of unemployment, pollution, wars, and social instability. To deny the pleasure pod, one has to choose to suffer the worst aspects of the human condition in the world that has been abandoned by tech billionaires. Authoritarians of the past dreamed of reshaping societies to their image of the ideal future world at any cost, and often it resulted in the mass destruction of human and non-human life. However, authoritarians of today believe that, this time, things may go differently. As Yarvin states, now we have video, which in 4chan language means that he believes that we now can sedate people into submission to authority by the use of entertainment. Billionaires may utilize the power of capital rather than the power of the state to achieve their goals. But their ultimate objective is to exert total control without any responsibility, thereby allowing them to reshape the world to their liking. Much like previous totalitarian regimes, but this time with AI-generated entertainment. And while ideas of human pod, technocratic monarchy, and total surveillance sound ridiculous, and all of it is presented to us in the form of memes and deeply uncharismatic Elon Musk public stunts, I do not want you to think that these folks aren't serious in their intentions. Silicon Valley billionaires all have their different ideas and are yet to start seriously competing for political power with each other. But all of them have spent the last 2 decades developing and testing new institutions, sponsoring politicians, and realizing their visions of the future. And Curtis Yarvin may seem like a humorous side character that is wearing his leather jacket to create a character of a 50-year-old rebel with a billionaire sponsor. But it will be foolish to dismiss him on the basis of poor writing and the fact that all of his works are posted online on Substack instead of being published in academic papers. We see the rise of an ideology that stands dismissed and unchallenged by the existing institutions of power, and also unknown to the general public, despite the fact that tech billionaires have already centralized all of the main informational channels in their own hands, and they own everybody's data and also sponsor a number of top-positioned politicians. While liberals spent the last 50 years pretending that everything is fine and leftists and conservatives worked tirelessly to critique liberals, neo-reactionaries were envisioning the alternative future, securing resources and propaganda to shift public opinion in their favor and creating a new political coalition that would execute their vision of the future. The reason we see futuristic projects seeping in is because it is our potential alternative to the current stagnant political and economic system, and it is now the time for the alternative to materialize. There is currently no widespread opposition to dark MAGA, dark enlightenment, or Silicon Valley. There is no ideological framework to oppose them. Minimal understanding of Silicon Valley ideology, a lack of critique of their proposals, and absolute lack of enthusiasm in mainstream liberal spaces to provide some sort of retaliation against the rising power of the tech companies and ultra-rich that own them. Since ideas of Yarvin, dark enlightenment, and adjacent reactionary ideologies remain unnoticed to the mainstream spaces and academics, we can't properly imagine the techno-totalitarian future and so can't critique it. The problem of dark enlightenment, Yarvin's neo-reaction, tech accelerationism, and similar movements is a problem of totalitarian control. All of the supposed technological progress that the Silicon Valley promises relies on data extraction, constant, involuntary surveillance, control, restrictions, disinformation, and violence that is required to bring their ideas into reality. The tactics and methods of techno-totalitarian control increasingly find their place in modern wars, consumer electronics, cars, online spaces, policies, and really everywhere. The fact that tech billionaires keep reinventing worse versions of trains for their freedom cities is secondary to a problem of a totalitarian rule that they propose. To oppose techno-totalitarianism, we need to have an alternative, desirable idea of the future, the vision that can go mainstream. Mark Fisher is famous for putting in the phrase that it is easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. But, well, we have to start imagining a better future, even though Fisher could not do it for himself. We need to stop imagining the end of the world and start imagining the alternatives that do not include us destroying the planet Earth and moving into a space tube, or developing a fancy system of concentration camps with VR. And while gay space communism is a meme, but dare to imagine it becoming a reality before we get transferred into human pods or end up in the wasteland surrounding freedom cities. We live in an era when a great deal of technology has been developed, but is either not implemented or not accessible to the majority of people. We automate wars instead of automating unsafe and difficult jobs. Our energy systems rely on violence, extraction of capital, and destruction of the environment. Whether it is advanced infrastructure, work automation, robotization of hazardous tasks, alternative energy sourcing, data-driven agriculture, or accessible cutting-edge medicine, there is a whole list of technologies that we are yet to implement into a broader public. So there is a lot of space for an actual techno-optimism that doesn't include billionaire bunkers nor concentration camps. Ask yourself, do you want to live in a human pod in Theo's Peterville? If not, perhaps it is a time to imagine something better. Thank you for watching, and thanks to Asina and all of my patrons for sponsoring my work. If you consider me worthy and have a coin to spare, Patreon is the best place to support my work. If you liked this video, consider watching my other video on far-right dieting habits that YouTube just made me to re-upload, and so it never actually went public. And look, if you need social credit for it, I have an exact copy of the same video with 50,000 views, so go watch it. Otherwise, thank you, and see you on the next one.